The vast darkness of space stretched endlessly before the horizon, a sleek exploration vessel cutting through the silent void. Captain Hyun Park sat in the command chair, his fingers drumming a quiet rhythm on the armrest. The ship's interior hummed with soft technological sounds, a gentle background to the routine of deep space exploration. Lieutenant Ji-eun Kim monitored the ship's sensors, her eyes scanning the holographic displays that floated around her workstation. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until something definitely was. A strange signal flickered at the edge of their detection range, unlike anything they had ever encountered before. "Captain," she called out, her voice measured but with a hint of excitement. "We're picking up an unusual transmission." He unshifted, in his chair, moving closer to the display. The signal was complex, layered with intricate patterns that seemed to dance and weave through space. It wasn't random. It was structured, deliberate, but completely alien to human communication protocols. The ship's advanced quantum computers began analyzing the transmission. Lines of code and data streams scrolled rapidly across multiple screens. What started as a curious anomaly was quickly becoming something much more significant. "It looks like a communication network," Ji-eun explained, her fingers moving quickly across the holographic interface. "But it's massive, far more extensive than anything we've ever mapped before." Hyun studied the data carefully. The signal originated from a region of space they had previously marked as empty, a vast dark area between known star systems. Yet here was evidence of something enormous, something hidden. The transmission wasn't just a simple signal. It was a complex web of interconnected communications, like a digital nervous system spanning multiple star systems. Each packet of data seemed to be part of a larger, more intricate network. "We might have just discovered something extraordinary," Hyun muttered, more to himself than to anyone else on the bridge. As the computers continued processing, fragments of information began to take shape. They weren't just random signals. These were structured communications. Administrative logs, navigation coordinates, what appeared to be bureaucratic exchanges between different parts of a massive organizational structure. Ji-eun's eyes widened. "Captain, these communication patterns, they suggest an organized civilization. A big one." The ship's AI began constructing preliminary translations. Broken phrases emerged, references to administrative sectors, fleet movements, resource allocations. Each fragment painted a picture of something vast and complex. "This isn't just a small outpost or a lone civilization," Hyun realized. "This looks like an entire galactic network." The bridge crew worked silently, their excitement growing with each decoded transmission. They were witnessing something unprecedented. My first contact wasn't going to be a dramatic moment of alien ships appearing. Instead, it was happening through intercepted communications. Hyun pressed a button, initiating a ship-wide alert. "All senior staff to the bridge. We have a potential major discovery." Within minutes, the bridge filled with the ship's top researchers and technical experts. Everyone gathered around the holographic displays, watching as more and more of the alien communication network revealed itself. The signal suggested a hierarchical system far more complex than human communication networks. Multiple layers of approval, intricate routing mechanisms, and what seemed like incredibly bureaucratic processes for even the simplest decisions. "It's like they've turned communication into a complex mathematical equation," one of the linguists remarked, shaking her head in disbelief. As hours passed, the Horizon's crew continued decoding. They were no longer just passive observers. They were the first humans to peek into what appeared to be a massive, galaxy-spanning civilization. Hyun looked at his crew, a mix of excitement and caution in his eyes. "We need to be careful," he warned. "We don't know what we're dealing with yet." Little did they know, their accidental discovery was about to change everything humans understood about life in the universe. The galactic empire they had stumbled upon was real, massive, and completely unaware that a small human exploration vessel had just found its most closely guarded secret communication network. The ship's research team worked tirelessly, their fingers dancing across holographic interfaces as they began decoding the alien transmissions. Captain Hun Park watched as his team transformed raw data into something comprehensible, each breakthrough bringing more confusion and unexpected humor. Dr. Lee, the lead linguist, was the first to break through the communication barriers. She sat back in her chair, a strange mix of disbelief and amusement crossing her face. "You're not going to believe this," she said, calling Hyun and Ji-eun closer. The decoded messages revealed a bureaucratic system so complex it bordered on the absurd. One transmission detailed a months-long debate about the exact shade of blue to be used for standardized fleet uniforms. Another discussed a 6-month review process for a minor navigation route adjustment that would save mere minutes of travel time. "They're spending more time talking about doing things than actually doing them," Ji-eun muttered, scrolling through the translations. The communication network was a labyrinth of approvals, subcommittees, and endless discussions. Each decision seemed to require multiple layers of verification. A simple request for supply allocation could take weeks, sometimes months, to complete. Hyun found himself both fascinated and amused. "It's like they've turned bureaucracy into an art form," he commented, watching as another transmission revealed yet another administrative hurdle. The most surprising discovery was the communication style. Instead of direct, efficient messaging, the alien civilization seemed to communicate through elaborate, circuitous language. A simple request would be wrapped in layers of formal language, multiple disclaimers, and extensive contextual information. Dr. Lee pulled up a translated message that perfectly illustrated their findings. It was a request to adjust a minor communication protocol, but it spanned 17 pages of dense technical language. The actual request was buried deep within paragraphs of unnecessary explanation. How do they get anything done? Ji-eun wondered aloud, reading through the transmission. The research team began to compile a comprehensive report. They discovered the alien civilization had an incredibly sophisticated communication infrastructure that was simultaneously impressive and completely inefficient. Massive data networks connected multiple star systems, but the information flow was painfully slow. One particularly amusing discovery was their conflict resolution process. Instead of direct negotiations, they had elaborate diplomatic protocols that could extend conflicts for years, if not decades. A minor territorial dispute discovered in the communications had been ongoing for what seemed like several planetary generations. Hyun watched his team work, their initial scientific curiosity slowly transforming into a mix of fascination and barely contained laughter. They had stumbled upon something extraordinary, a galactic civilization that had perfected the art of doing nothing quickly. "We need to be careful about how we approach this," Hyun reminded his team. "We can't let our amusement compromise our scientific integrity." But it was difficult to maintain complete professionalism. Each new decoded message seemed more ridiculous than the last. One transmission detailed a 3-year committee review to approve a new type of maintenance robot, a process that would take humans mere weeks. Ji-eun discovered a communication about food standardization that had been in discussion for what appeared to be decades. The level of detail was mind-boggling. They were debating the precise nutritional content of meals down to microscopic levels. "This isn't just a communication network," Dr. Lee explained during a team briefing. "This is a glimpse into an entire civilization's way of thinking. They've created a system so complex that it almost prevents change." The implications were profound. This wasn't just an alien communication network. It was a window into a fundamentally different approach to organizing society. Where humans valued speed and efficiency, this civilization seemed to value process and exhaustive deliberation. As the hours passed, the team continued their work. Each decoded message added another layer to their understanding. They were no longer just observing a communication network. They were uncovering the inner workings of an entire galactic civilization. Hyun looked at his team, seeing the mix of scientific excitement and barely contained amusement. They had discovered something truly unique, a civilization that had turned bureaucracy into an art form, a galactic empire trapped in its own complex systems. The universe, it seemed, was far stranger and more wonderful than they had ever imagined. The Horizon's communication lab became a hive of intense activity. Jiun worked tirelessly, developing an advanced algorithm that would allow them to navigate the alien communication networks without detection. Her fingers moved rapidly across holographic interfaces, creating a digital camouflage unlike anything previously attempted. Captain Hyun watched carefully, understanding the delicate nature of their mission. One wrong move could expose their presence and potentially trigger an unknown response from the massive alien civilization they had discovered. "We need to be ghosts," Ji-yoon explained, her eyes reflecting the complex data stream surrounding her. "Our goal is to observe, not interact." The algorithm she developed was a masterpiece of digital engineering. It would mimic the communication patterns of the alien network, inserting their reconnaissance data seamlessly into the existing information flow. To the Imperial communication system, they would appear as just another routine transmission. Days turned into weeks of careful infiltration. Each decoded message revealed more about the mysterious Galactic Empire. Their first major breakthrough came unexpectedly. A comprehensive logistics report that mapped out entire supply chains across multiple star systems. Dr. Lee, the linguistics expert, found something fascinating. The alien civilization had an incredibly complex classification system for everything. Supplies weren't just categorized, they were sub-categorized, cross-referenced, and analyzed with mind-boggling detail. "Look at this," she showed Hyun a translated document. A simple food supply report contained 247 separate classifications, including subcategories for nutritional content, molecular composition, and even the emotional state of workers who processed the food. The team discovered the Empire's primary weakness. Their communication was so complex that it actually slowed down their ability to respond quickly. Every decision required multiple layers of approval, creating significant bureaucratic bottlenecks. Hyun found a transmission that perfectly illustrated this point. A minor fleet movement required 17 separate committee approvals, each with its own review process. What should have been a simple logistical decision became a months-long bureaucratic nightmare. Ji-eun's algorithm continued gathering intelligence. They mapped communication routes, identified key administrative sectors, and began understanding the intricate power structures within the Galactic Empire. "It's like they've created a system so complicated that it prevents rapid change," Hyun observed, reviewing the latest data streams. Their own complexity is their greatest vulnerability. The most surprising discoveries came from unexpected sources. Communication about technological development revealed that the Empire's advancement was significantly slower than human progress. Their research and development processes were bogged down by endless reviews and counter-reviews. One particularly amusing discovery was a decades-long debate about implementing a new communication protocol. The discussion had so many layers of complexity that the original technological improvement had become almost irrelevant. "They're stuck," Dr. Lee concluded after weeks of analysis. "Their system is so rigid that it prevents true innovation." The team worked with increasing excitement. Each decoded transmission added another piece to their growing understanding of this mysterious civilization. They weren't just gathering intelligence, they were uncovering the fundamental weaknesses of an entire galactic system. Hyun understood the strategic importance of their discovery. This wasn't just about scientific curiosity anymore. They had found a potential civilization that could be technologically vulnerable despite its massive scale. Ji-eun continued refining her algorithm, creating increasingly sophisticated methods of infiltration. The communication lab became a center of quiet intensity, with team members working around the clock to decode and understand the alien network. "We're writing a new chapter of human exploration," Hyun told his team during a briefing. "What we're doing here could change everything we understand about first contact and interstellar civilizations." As weeks passed, the Horizon's crew transformed. From passive observers to strategic intelligence gatherers, they were no longer just discovering an alien communication network, they were systematically understanding its every weakness. The universe had presented them with a puzzle, and human curiosity would not let it go unsolved. Something extraordinary was happening, and they were at the center of it. The moment of detection came unexpectedly. Deep within the massive communication network, a subtle anomaly triggered an alarm in the Imperial monitoring systems. Hundreds of bureaucratic channels suddenly became alive with urgent transmissions. On the horizon, alarms began to sound. Ji-Eun's fingers flew across the control panels, tracking the sudden surge of alien communication. "They've noticed us," she said quietly, her voice calm but filled with tension. The Imperial response was exactly what the human team had anticipated: slow, complicated, and bureaucratically overwhelming. Instead of an immediate aggressive action, they received a series of increasingly complex communication protocols demanding explanation and verification. Captain Hyun studied the incoming transmissions with a mixture of fascination and barely contained amusement. The alien civilization's first response was a 57-page official communication request, filled with legal terminology, cross-reference disclaimers, and multiple verification processes. "They're asking us to fill out a formal identification form," Dr. Lee translated, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Before they can even acknowledge our existence, we need to complete 17 separate documentation processes." The Imperial Communication Network buzzed with activity. Committees were formed, subcommittees were established, and review boards were convened, all to discuss the unexpected detection of an unknown communication signature. What should have been a moment of potential conflict became a bureaucratic circus. Different Imperial departments began arguing about the proper procedure for handling an unknown communication source. Some wanted immediate investigation, others demanded extensive review, and yet another group proposed forming a special task force to study the situation. Weeks passed. The Horizon's crew watched in amazement as the Imperial system tied itself into knots of administrative complexity. What could have been a swift response became a labyrinth of paperwork and procedural debates. "They're so concerned with following procedure that they're completely paralyzing their own response," Hyun observed, watching the communication streams. The most hilarious aspect was the Imperial leadership's complete confusion. Their communication systems were designed for predictable, controlled interactions. The humans represented something entirely unexpected: a communication source that didn't fit any existing classification. One transmission caught everyone's attention. A high-ranking Imperial official was proposing the creation of a new subcommittee to specifically study the unclassified communication anomaly, a process that would likely take years. Ji-Eun couldn't help but laugh. "They're going to have meetings about having meetings," she said, showing Hyun a translated document that proved her point exactly. The Imperial reaction revealed more about their civilization than any direct communication could. They were a species so committed to process that they had effectively created a system that prevented rapid decision-making. Days turned into weeks. The Horizon remained undetected, observing the massive bureaucratic machine as it struggled to respond to their presence. Each new Imperial transmission was more complex than the last, creating an ever-expanding web of administrative confusion. Dr. Lee began compiling a comprehensive report. "This isn't just a communication challenge," she explained to the crew. "This is a fundamental cultural difference. They cannot comprehend a direct, efficient approach." Hyun understood the strategic implications. The Imperial civilization's complexity was its greatest weakness. They were so focused on following procedure that they had lost the ability to respond quickly to unexpected situations. The human team watched and waited. Each Imperial transmission added another layer to their understanding. They were witnessing a civilization so trapped in its own systems that it could barely move. "We're not just exploring," Hyun told his crew during a briefing. "We're discovering the limits of bureaucratic organization." As another week passed, the Imperial Communication Network continued its complex dance of procedures and counter-procedures. The humans remained a mysterious anomaly, a challenge to a system that believed it could categorize and control everything. The universe had presented them with a remarkable discovery: a galactic empire so complex that it had become its own greatest limitation. The moment of direct communication arrived with unexpected simplicity. Captain Hyun and his team prepared a response that would challenge everything the Imperial civilization understood about diplomatic interaction. Instead of a formal, complex communication, They chose an approach that would completely disrupt the alien bureaucratic system. Their transmission was direct, almost playful, filled with visual presentations that highlighted the Imperial system's most ridiculous inefficiencies. The first visual presentation was a comedic flowchart showing how a simple decision in the Imperial system would take years to complete. Animated characters moved through layers of bureaucratic checkpoints, growing old and gray before reaching a final decision. Ji-un had carefully crafted the presentation, ensuring every detail would be technically accurate while simultaneously exposing the absurdity of their communication protocols. Each slide was a masterpiece of strategic humor. Imperial communication centers erupted in confusion. Their translation systems struggled to process a communication that didn't follow any known diplomatic protocol. Committees were immediately formed to analyze this unprecedented approach. "We're not attacking," Yun explained to his crew. "We're exposing their system's fundamental flaws through pure information and humor." The human transmission included detailed breakdowns of the Imperial civilization's technological limitations. Complex graphs showed how their bureaucratic processes had dramatically slowed technological development compared to human progress. One particularly effective slide showed a timeline of technological advancement. The Imperial civilization's progress was a flat line, while human development appeared as a rapidly climbing curve. It was both scientific analysis and visual comedy. Dr. Lee had ensured that every piece of information was scientifically accurate. They weren't creating fiction. They were presenting documented evidence of the Imperial system's structural weaknesses. The Imperial leadership's response was predictably complicated. Multiple communication channels activated simultaneously, each sending increasingly complex messages demanding clarification, explanation, and formal documentation. But the humans had anticipated this. Each Imperial message was automatically processed through their translation algorithms, revealing the underlying bureaucratic nonsense. What seemed like serious diplomatic communication was actually a series of procedural requests that said almost nothing. "They're trying to bury us in paperwork," Ji-un laughed, watching the incoming transmissions. "It's their standard defense mechanism." Hyun's team continued their strategic communication. They began introducing concepts that the Imperial system couldn't easily categorize: humor, creativity, adaptability. These were things that didn't fit into their rigid communication frameworks. Visual presentations became more elaborate. They showed human problem-solving techniques, demonstrating how quickly humans could adapt and innovate. Each example was a direct challenge to the Imperial civilization's slow, methodical approach. The Imperial communication networks began to show signs of strain. Their systems were designed for predictable, controlled interactions. The human approach was dynamic, unpredictable, and fundamentally different from anything they had encountered. "We're not just communicating," Hyun told his crew. "We're demonstrating an entirely different way of thinking." Hours turned into days. The Imperial leadership became increasingly confused. Their standard diplomatic protocols were useless against an approach that didn't follow any known rules of engagement. Dr. Lee discovered something fascinating. The Imperial system was slowly breaking down, unable to process a communication style that didn't fit its existing categories. Their rigid communication protocols were becoming their greatest weakness. The final transmission was a masterpiece of strategic communication. It wasn't an attack or a threat. It was a playful, almost friendly exposure of the Imperial civilization's structural limitations. "We come in peace," the transmission concluded, "and we're here to help you understand that there are better ways to communicate." The universe watched as two civilizations met, not through conflict but through the universal language of understanding and subtle humor. The human team had achieved something unprecedented, a first contact that was neither violent nor traditionally diplomatic. As the final transmission ended, Hyun looked at his crew. They had just changed the course of human-alien interaction forever.